Met Rob.
Now.
Thank you. Technology director.
Right. Paul's is not right either. All right. Are we good? Okay. I guess I will still lead in board book. And are we recording? Oh, I'm going to hear myself.
Yep. He'll mute us.
Great. All right. So we will call to order the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Directors meeting at 7:06 p.m. Am I supposed to do this? I haven't had to do this yet.
Do it.
Did I beginning and the end?
Sure.
There we go. So if you guys will all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And welcome to our first in-person meeting in quite a while, which is crazy. So, and Esperanza's first meeting in person too, isn't it?
Justin's.
Oh yeah, Justin's too. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, thank you guys all for making this work and for the staff for getting everything ready for us. We appreciate it. All right. We are going to dive right into our comments from the public. And as you all know, we have been doing Zoom meetings. So we've had all of these being read in the past. And so we're still going to follow suit just because we can't yet have public in our meetings with us. So again, public comments are due to be submitted by noon the day of the meeting. And then we do read those, and we still stick to the 3 minutes per person per reading. And we will do that tonight. I think Director Ward is going to do the timekeeping. And as always, we will do our best to get through them as quickly as we can. And if we have any situations where we can't get through an entire one in that 3 minute period, the remainder and the actual submission will be in its entirety put in our minutes. And all of the board members actually read all of those comments prior to the meeting anyway. So we will make sure that they're all out there. We have 43 public comments this evening. So please bear with us as we are going to round robin reading each of these. And I think we will start with Director Aganaga, if you're willing to take like the first 12 or so. And if you need a break, feel free
I'll
to
let you
take
know when
a break.
I have to tap out.
Great.
All right. Public comment number one, Daniel Miller. We recently heard about proposed change to the school year. We would like to voice our concerns. Albany doesn't have the infrastructure in place to allow students to attend school in hot summer months. In addition, it would be to a detriment of our community and our students to have the proposed new schedule. Many students must work in the summer to support their families and support their own needs. The proposed schedule would also negatively impact student athletes by not aligning with other schools' schedules. Public comment number two, Philip Jocks. Is Albany School Board adding 2 additional board members for a total of 7? If so, will the election process take place? I strongly discourage an appointee process. We must have diversity within our community, the people who have the right to vote. Thank you for your time and service. Public comment number 3, Javier Cervantes. Dear GAPS Board, when hiring Superintendent Goff was announced, I was impressed by her commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion. Albany is changing. One can see that in the community, and that change is reflected in our schools all across GAPS. This is not an opinion. It is it is verifiable fact, and demographic data proves it. Yet somehow the most vulnerable among us are left feeling isolated and forgotten about. Superintendent Goff has tried very hard to mitigate many of these issues. I am a firm believer that Superintendent Goff has the success and well-being of every child in her heart and her mission. That attend Greater Albany Public Schools positions such as Superintendent Goff's is one that is excessively complex and nuanced. No matter what decisions are made, there will always be someone that is a naysayer or displeased about something. And the nature of her work, I suppose that said, and to the point, I commend Superintendent Goff and her leadership. The community, the state, the nation, the world are living throughout unprecedented times. Times that are challenging and have not been undertaken in 100 years. Since the last global pandemic, Superintendent Goff has been given credit for making the best of an impossible situation. Few people would step up to the plate as she has done to try to make positive differences. Every last board member needs to remember that fact. Those that would criticize her without understanding the true responsibility of leading a very complex such as organization such as GAPS, someone from the outside always seems to believe they can do it better, yet few try. Leaders like Superintendent Goff are faced with a complex issue every day. Leaders get it right, and sometimes they need to improve. No one is 100% infallible. I am pleased to say that Superintendent Goff does more than just what she is criticized for. When she is criticized, she tries her best to make things as possible, knowing full well, regardless of the outcomes, there will always be opportunities for lifelong learning for everyone involved. I believe Superintendent Goff's visions, values-driven leadership is to be commended. The students and parents are lucky to have her. Sincerely, Javier Cervantes. Public comment number 4. Melanie Johnson. Hello, I am a parent of a 6th and 10th grader in Albany School District. I am writing to comment on the calendar, in particular calendar options that would have shortened summer. I have written a longer letter to the board members showing evidence that year-round schools do not help achievement and detailing the many negative impacts on our students and families and communities. But that is a long, complex subject, not suited for 3-minute comment. Instead, I would like to focus on our values. Our district proudly declares that we're building bridges to lifelong learners and brighter futures. We do rally. Do we really believe that? How can we prepare students for many years of self-directed lifelong learning if we do not allow them to practice self-directed and intrinsic motivation learning? Contrary to what many believe, students do not stop learning over summer. They do not lose some of their route knowledge, but when researchers look at math reasoning skills, they found that they increased during the summer break. While I can find no studies, I'm reasonably certain that creative problem solving, self-awareness, and other soft skills also improve. These skills are critical in lifelong learners. Why do we develop these skills over summer? Summer is a large enough stretch of time that it seems to inflate to most kids and allows for open-ended projects, creative problem solving, and self-discovery that doesn't happen in shorter breaks. I also get that some kids would benefit from year-round school, and it makes sense to consider year-round charter school. However, year-round school isn't what's best for everyone. Students, especially high school students, will miss out on important opportunities. For instance, we were to go through the end of June next year, my son would miss out on an additional 2 weeks of instruction before his AP test. Sorry, I got to scroll down. I do not know what my daughter will do her summer this year, but last year, even with her garden, learning food preservation and other daily self-directed and self-selected and self-directed learning activities, she decided to create a writing binder. She kept the binder after summer, and it has really helped her keep up with her writing organized, and write more even during the school year. She could, in theory, do this type of
Time.
Okay with.
Yeah, I'm gonna do one more.
You got one.
It's really good. I was just like,
We
wow.
might go 5 at a time. Let's see how it goes.
I'm writing in support of Superintendent Goff for supporting the district schools of equity, diversity, and inclusion practices. I appreciate her comment to these goals in all ways. These remarks focus specifically on the situation that ensured last week on the first day of elementary schools, students were welcomed back to school after more than a year. In an ideal world, there would have been more time to plan and execute a long-awaited but very complex first day. With more information sent to parents, more time to adjust to an ever-changing environment, in this ideal, parents would have time to digest the myriad of information, time to reach out to those in charge, to voice their concerns about effects of having police officers that would have had some students. So in this ideal world, the leaders of the school district and the police department would have had time and willingness to listen to the concerns to determine the best course of action, to answer them in a way that included the concerns of all, including the minority voice. The next step would be to jointly plan a course of action to reflect this. It wasn't an ideal world, and there wasn't the luxury of time. But when the superintendent received concern, she heard and acted. I believe this was the right decision at the right time in that place, and that supports the district goal of EDI. I am sorry the decision has been taken up by some members of the community as a wedge issue, pitting school against the police.
Okay. Public comment number 6, Andrea Bartel. Hello, I wanted to share my support for every principal who declined police presence prior to welcoming day for Superintendent Goff's decision in asking police to step out of this specific event to care for the lost vulnerable. School has to be a safe place for every child and can only be achieved through a trauma-informed care approach. I am so proud and thankful to have GAP's leadership modeling this care and making hard, unpopular decisions that cover the safety of the marginalized. The duty of the police is to serve and protect, and that means to stand down when it is in the best interest of our students. I believe that your decision actually benefited APD by being given the opportunity to think more compassionately and critically at the deeper issue of what is truly serving and protecting. The opportunity of which I deeply hope they take seriously. The language and deep awareness that Superintendent and her team communicated to the community was profound and sets the bar for critical shifts in our Albany culture. You are teaching the whole community. Thank you for making the right decisions that are hard. Those are the life-changing decisions that create belonging for every kid. You are fully supported. With gratitude, Andrea Bartel. Comment number 7. And I apologize if I pronounce this name wrong. Chericia Beaver. As a member of this community and a parent of 2 children who attend school in this community, I find it exhausting and maddening to watch Superintendent Melissa Goff and Vice Superintendent Lisa Harlan constantly have to explain and defend their actions of empathy, inclusion, and advocacy. If you do not understand the role education plays in bigotry, racism, and prejudice, you do not deserve to sit on the school board. Lisa and Melissa have made it a priority to listen to and give voice to those who exist in the margins in this community, not to make them louder than those whose voices have already been heard, but to make sure all voices are given equal weight. Equality can sound a lot like oppression to those who have benefited from the inequality. If you don't understand why anyone in the community, ethnicity aside, would feel uncomfortable with law enforcement at their schools, you are not talking to your whole community. If you don't know the biggest concerns for minority students/parents, foster children/parents, children of immigrants, disabled children, and parents of disabled children, you are not talking to your whole community. Melissa and Lisa know these concerns because they are actively engaged with all their students. To those who have said everything is racist now, please understand it has always been racist. It's just that no one was listening until now. If you feel Melissa and Lisa spend too much time on diversity, empathy, and anti-racism, please understand it only feels like too much time because zero time has been spent on these important topics in the past. It has been a rough couple of years for everyone. There's been a lot of people asking for change and a lot of people resistant to or not understanding why change is necessary. It's easy to confuse what is with what ought to be, especially when it has worked out in your favor. All Melissa and Lisa are doing are elevating the field for those who are saying the status quo is hurting our children and raising the expectations for what will be taught and what will not be tolerated in our school system. If you are opposed to that, I would ask you to have a conversation with your whole community. If you feel your voice has been erased because it is no longer the loudest in the room, I would ask you to take a breath and look around at everyone you've been yelling over and have a conversation with your whole community. Lisa and Melissa have integrity, humility, and courage on their side. I am grateful for their vision. Thank you. Public comment number 8, Rebecca Johnson. Hello, my name is Rebecca Johnson. I am a 6th grader in GAPS. From the first, I was against the policy for year-round school. For the first 5 years of school, I went to schools without air conditioning. Once the temperatures passed about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the 2 fans in every classroom didn't cool us down enough for much learning to be done. Once the temperatures got a little higher, our school day consisted of sitting in the classroom with the blinds closed, the lights off, and the fans running. Even with air conditioning, it takes time to cool down enough to learn anything after being outside. And air conditioning is expensive. Aren't there better ways to use the money than do year-round school? Over short breaks, most of us sit around and do nothing. But summer feels like an unlimited period of time to do anything. Real learning happens over summer vacations, not rules, but how to think and be creative. No amount of schooling can teach that. I started a cardboard, aluminum foil, and paint model of the ISS, started making paper towel tube dolls, and created a writing binder for summer vacations, things that never would have occurred to me to do over shorter breaks. It took over half the summer for me to actually start doing any of it, and in the end, I did. It takes 2 months for us to get bored enough to get up and do something, and summer gives us that opportunity. Taking away from summer vacation will take away part of our ability to reason and think creatively when we are older, and doing that will make the world a worse place to be in. Public comment number 9, Benjamin Johnson. Dear Greater Albany Public School Board, my name is Ben Johnson. I'm a 10th grader at West Albany. I am concerned because of the proposed non-typical schedules have a number of problems. The second schedule is in theory a decent alternative, but it results in a great deal of harm. AP courses, for instance, lose yet another week of instruction time, as the AP finals are typically in early mid-May. Any time after that isn't usable for instruction time. On top of that, many other opportunities are lost, like the possibility of taking a course at the community college. The last week of LBCC summer session is on the week before Labor Day. If school starts before then, it eliminates the opportunity of taking a summer course. Summer jobs would also be a casualty since employers may not want employees for such short time. Thus, removing 2 weeks from summer solves virtually nothing and yet destroys many opportunities. The third option, the one that switches us over to year-round school, is even worse. The schedule has the same problems as the first schedule, only worse. Over the past year and a half, we have lost months of instructional time and normal activities. The act of swapping to a new system will only exacerbate the problem. The reality is that this year is probably the worst possible year to swap to a new system. As a student, I can say that morale is at an all-time low right now. We just need to be able to have a normal year. Out of personal experience, I can say the continual breaks would be more of a detriment than simply taking 3 months off school. I took a year off Latin, during which time I did not study, and when I came back, it took me 2 weeks, and I was getting better grades than when I left. Compare that to this year, when after the quarter, I couldn't remember a singular thing from any of my classes from the quarter prior. I have been reading up on year-round school, and from what I've read, it makes little to no difference in learning. I will include the links to some of these resources at the end of this email. In essence, we'd be giving up opportunities and forcing students through another difficult change for no benefit. So please let students breathe for at least 1 year. Public comment number 10. Ann Catlin. Dear members of the Greater Albany Public School Board, Superintendent Goff and Assistant Superintendent Harlan, my name is Ann Catlin. My husband and 2 West Albany High School teens live in the Hackelman district. I want to express my appreciation for all the work you and the staff have done to get schools ready and safely open for the constant changing guidelines and requirements from the state and county and the diverse needs of our students, athletes, staff, and families. Despite the incredible extra lifts this year due to COVID, it is amazing how such great work has been accomplished. I am most appreciative of the efforts that Superintendent Goff and Assistant Superintendent Harlan and GAP's leadership have undertaken this year around equity and inclusion, including developing an educational equity policy that was adopted last summer, a teacher development scholarship program that helps students of color and underrepresented groups become teachers, for taking a stand against white supremacy, hate and harassment, and taking time to listen and learn from students and families that have different lived experiences than most of us, and engaging in the Courageous Conversations programs. Thank you for starting efforts to bring GAPs up to speed on best practices and needs on the very important and necessary work around equity, diversity, and inclusion that will help us all act with a more equitable lens and that can be modeled and continued with the community. Despite the many challenges over the last year, I commend you all for navigating landmines and for successful and inspiring school bond projects and the work on equity policies. I especially commend Mrs. Goff for her leadership and commitment to the students, staff, and families in our district. Thank you for building bridges and making Albany a better place for our families. With gratitude, Ann Catlin. I can do the next 2, the short ones.
Sure, that's great.
Public comment number 11, Ellie Sheppy. I appreciate the efforts of the superintendent to make our community safe and healthy for all children. I am grateful for the work this board has done to promote equity. Public comment number 12, Jill Nelson. I would like to voice my support for our superintendent's prioritization of making our schools a safe learning environment for all students. Her commitment to equity has been evident throughout this past year, and that can only benefit our district. I am grateful to know that our district leadership is trauma-informed. I hope this compassionate commitment to listening to the voices of the less heard can lead our community toward being a safe place for all our citizens, especially those young enough to attend our schools.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Public comment number 13, Marshall Godsey. I don't live in Albany or have kids, but when my wife and I do have kids, we'd love to live in Albany and get their education there, but not like this. And even so, with our current reality and location, this does affect all of us, doesn't it? I've watched all this unfold on Facebook. I've seen all the anger, hatred, vitriol, assumptions, and read all the comments, and nearly all that I saw was in agreement. Nearly all I saw had no empathy, no desire to learn or to understand, to see it from a different perspective, no desire to even just simply listen and consider. Only the desire to cling to a reality only experienced by some of us, a reality that's questioned more and more each day, but not by those choosing to ignore it, those who can ignore it. I urge you all to listen to each other, to truly listen and truly talk for once. Have some empathy and understanding. Stop reacting and assuming or deciding what someone else thinks and feels, and actually ask and then try to understand. Figure out how we move forward and maybe become something better than what we've been holding on to, what we've been wishing and pretending existed. Study like you say you want your children to. Then tackle this problem together for everyone with all the information in front of you. If you truly want good cops, do the work to figure out how to make that possible. Stop the cycles of abuse you ignore. Reject the hate and racism that is raising its ever-present head always higher and more boldly. Clean the festering wound that is hatred instead of twisting your finger in it and trying to ignore it. Public comment number 14, Shelby Ensler. As a parent of Albany's K-12 school district, I am writing because I fully support the work of our superintendent and her efforts to make our community safe and equitable for every family. I am very grateful that our school board has continued to ensure the equity is valued and upheld for every child. However, even with those efforts, we still have children facing traumas surrounding racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other hate. I can only imagine how intense it would be for our children if you all have not taken the steps that you have already. I just want to say thank you for taking a stand for our children and allowing voices who normally go unheard to finally be heard. Sincerely, Shelby Ensler. Public comment number 15, Danae Newton Vasquez. I am deeply concerned about the recent events in our town that have escalated and resulted in racist attacks against our own students we serve and intend to protect. I support and appreciate Superintendent Goff's efforts to hear the stories of trauma from all of our students, and I am deeply worried about the safety of our students who have experienced the trauma caused by hate, including racism, homophobia, and xenophobia. While I thank the superintendent for her efforts in standing up for our students who've been silenced throughout history and for listening to their voices, I'm scared for these children, including my own, and I am hearing the cries and stories of racism that have affected families in our community for much longer than the last 10 days. I emphasize the importance of continuing to build the spaces for our families to feel their stories and efforts to educate our community so we all might understand and walk in the shoes of those in our community who've been hurt and judged and shunned and beaten and who went through our schools unprotected because they did not fit the status quo. Hearing those voices is long overdue, and with deep understanding and care and worry, I stand by Superintendent Goff's efforts to ensure this become the status quo in our little town. Thank you. Public comment number 16, Corey Smith. To the school board and our local community, I support the work of the superintendent in her efforts to make our community safe and healthy for all children. I am grateful for the work this board has done to promote equity. I am concerned about the safety of our students who are going through the trauma caused by racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other hate. Thank you for standing up for them and listening to their voices. Corey Smith. Public comment number 17, Talara Casey. I am concerned about the safety of our students who are going through the trauma caused by racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other hate. Thank you for standing up for them and listening to their voices. Talaria. Public comment number 18, Heather Medina Sacida and Juan Sacida. If I'm saying that right, I apologize if I did not. Dear GAPS Board, my husband and I have been impressed with Superintendent Goff and her commitment to the education, health, safety, diversity, equity, inclusion of our community. We have attended various meetings where Superintendent Goff has showed up in spaces to hear the diverse voices of the community members. She has been very welcoming and wanting to hear comments, both positive and negative, in the school district. We have appreciated the various meetings by Zoom to keep parents informed this year during COVID. We appreciate that the school board and the superintendent have taken COVID seriously and have looked at how it affects Blacks, Indigenous, people of color. We have lived in Albany for 10 years and have seen the increased diversity of our neighborhoods and in Albany. We have been foster parents to 2 young children, now ages 6 and 11, for 2 years. Both the kids started school last year at Liberty, and the teachers are very welcoming and supportive. Our 6-year-old continues to attend Liberty. His first grade teacher has been excellent. The incident at Memorial Middle School last week, week 2 of an in-person hybrid, has made us concerned for the safety of our 11-year-old. She is also concerned for her safety and concerned for her BIPOC friends and classmates. We understand as parents have only received an email and video, and we do not know the whole story. The current climate of our country and community has in some areas demonstrated a disregard for the unique challenges faced by the BIPOC community. We understand everyone has a right to their opinion. We teach our children the beauty of a diverse community. We feel Superintendent Goff is one of many shining lights and gaps that have supported a diversity, equity, inclusion, and truly cares. We commend Superintendent Goff for her leadership. It is not easy to do the right thing as a leader, and she is leading by example. We are blessed to have her. Sincerely, Heather Medina Sauceda and Juan Sauceda, Albany residents and parents of children that attend GAPS. I'll read the last little too, and then I'll pass it on. Does that work? Okay. Public comment 19 is Cameron Settlemeyer. Every child has a right to feel safe in their community. Every child has a right to feel safe at school. Every single one. Public comment number 20, Rosa Placencia. Hi, I would like to ask the board how they are making sure that the membership board is truly diverse and represents all the minority groups in this community. I also would like to express my sincere support to Melissa for being welcoming and open to see the whole community and for including our Hispanic families. I have 3 children, one in 4th grade. Rosa Placencia, community member.
Okay. Public comment number 21, Diana Hammond. My name is Diana Hammond, and I live off of 53rd Avenue in Southwest in Albany. I am emailing in full support of our superintendent and assistant superintendent in their efforts to make our community safe and healthy for all children. I'm very concerned about the safety of our students who are going through trauma caused by racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other forms of hate. I applaud you for standing up for those who are marginalized, listening to their voices, and hearing their pleas. As a former employee of GAPS, I both witnessed and experienced racism at my job. I created an environment where students of color and students in the LGBTQIA plus community could feel safe, heard, and recognized. While I was mostly met with support, I did experience backlash from students, staff, and families. I was called racist, a beaner, told not to see color, and asked where the safe space for white cisgender students were. Thank you, Superintendent Goff and Assistant Superintendent Harlan, for seeing our children, for seeing us, for hearing us, for supporting us. Thank you, Diana Hammond. Public comment number 22, Katie Legatt. Good evening, Albany School Board. I am writing to express my support of listening to minority voices and finding new ways to build community relationships. I know that change doesn't come easy for any of us, and I think we see that challenge showing its face these past weeks with the schools and police event. What I would like to say with my note today is that it is important that we have open minds, ears, and hearts and continue to seek new ways to build bridges, and that we allow minority voices the chance to have a seat at the table. I would also like to express my support of Superintendent Goff and the Superintendent Harlan in taking courageous steps to pause and reevaluate rather than continue with the status quo. Together, we can grow and build a better vision of what we are now. Respectfully, Katie Legatt. Public comment number 23, Graham Quisenberry. To the school board, I have never met Melissa Goff, but I've greatly appreciated her leadership since reading her comments from the Back to School pep rally in 2019 when she introduced herself to faculty and staff. At that rally, she gave concrete examples from her past experience as an educator, why equity, diversity, and inclusion are so important in our schools and in our country as a whole today. It was with an equity lens that Superintendent Goff called for a pause recently after some elementary students of color were frightened by the presence of police welcoming students back to school. It was the right decision. As a result, some have wrongly said that the school district hates police. That could not be further from the truth. Having seen firsthand the positive relationship between APD Officer Ken Vanderm and the campus community at South Albany High School, where I volunteered for a number of years. The Officer on Campus program was suspended because of the pandemic and is scheduled to resume when classes start in September. I support Superintendent Goff and wish her and GAP's faculty, staff, and students the best with schools reopening. Graham Quisenberry. Public comment number 24, Lindsay Lancaster. I wanted to offer my support for the superintendent and assistant superintendent as a former GAPS parent. I also happen to be a white woman with Latinx children. Does law enforcement serve an important role in society? Yes. Do people of color suffer disproportionately at the hands of law enforcement? Yes. Both of these things can be true. Those calling for the superintendent's removal and simultaneously rallying for support for APD are ignoring the lived experience of many of their neighbors. They're also ignoring the fact that racism is intertwined in the history of our educational system. Please research the history of state schools and Native Americans, the forced sterilization of the Latinx population, and the segregation and dehumanization of Black children in education. In 2021, systemic racism is alive and being upheld by law enforcement. Not everyone feels safe in their presence, and this is earned. I would encourage you all to listen with the intent of learning instead of just responding. How can we work to bridge the divide and heal these divisions? It starts with acknowledgement and empathy. We all have the same goal of having our children feel safe at school. We have different views on how this can happen, but we can work together. However, that will require listening to the voices you're currently trying to yell over. To the superintendent and assistant superintendent, thank you for listening to your families. Public comment number 25. Bridget Truax. My name is Bridget Truax. I live in Albany, Oregon. I am writing to you, GAPS School Board, in support of Melissa Goff as our superintendent. As a prior student of Albany GAPS K-12, an employee of GAPS, and mother of a biracial child whom identifies as Black and who attends GAPS, I couldn't be more proud to say that Melissa Goff is our superintendent. Melissa Goff was hired knowing that she is fully committed to make our community safe and healthy for all children with a lens of equity used. GAPS has since implemented the Regional Racial Equity Proclamation, of which you all voted on and passed. Now is the time for GAPS to show up and display the integrity of this proclamation, even when times get tough. Quote, our mission is to confront, interrupt, and dismantle systems of inequity that persist for our students, staff, and families of color, unquote, as stated in the proclamation. We must have grit as we teach our primary students to not give up, even when things are challenging and hard. Often, in steps of growth, there is one step forward and two steps back. Albany is changing. A growth of population and in diversity is happening here, just as it is all over the country. And there are challenges from those in this community that would just like to keep things as they were in the good old days. It is imperative that GAPS continue to uphold their support for Melissa Goff and the work she has begun here in our district regarding academics, equity, and race. She had only been superintendent for 6 months before the pandemic hit. And even though all the grand challenges this past year, she has been and continues to be transparent with students, staff, and parents, and the rest of the community while following all the health guidelines. Mistakes have been made, miscommunication has happened, and Melissa owns those mistakes with transparency and continues to get up each and every morning to serve our students and staff with equity and inclusion while seeking to do what is best for all the kids. There have been tragic events that have happened across the country. Adam Toledo, George Floyd, Dante Wright, Breonna Taylor, to name a few. Even in our town, Albany, Oregon, one of our middle school students was beat up by older kids while being called the N-word. For the child, my child, who was yelled at in our own front yard, that life doesn't matter, his life doesn't matter. For all the Black and brown students that attend GAPS that have been called the N-word. Is that time up?
That's time.
Okay. Public comment 26. Alyssa Maceo. Sorry, we got that wrong. Good evening, board members. I feel the need to write to give my full support for our superintendent. Every single decision they make, or superintendents, I guess, they make is for the best interest of our students, all of them. I'm also writing in support of our superintendents on behalf of some people in the community who are too scared to write in, can't write in, or don't have the access to write in. These voices still need to be heard, and our superintendents have done and will continue to do a wonderful job in hearing these voices. Thank you Melissa Goff and Lisa Harlan, and our district leadership team for listening, pausing, and making the right decision for our kids. The decision for our kids was not against police and first responders by any means, and we understand that. The right decision isn't always the majority or popular decision. Thank you for understanding others' perspectives, backgrounds, cultures, viewpoints. Now it's time for our community to do some of this work, to see others' perspectives, backgrounds, cultures, and viewpoints. These words are not just mine. They are from many others I work with and many families I work for that do not feel comfortable writing in. Thank you for all you do, Alicia Maysel. Public comment number 20.
You want to go ahead and move to Jen?
Okay,
Jen, you want to start this one?
number 27.
Public comment number 27 by Jason Dorset from the NAACP organization. The NAACP statement regarding Greater Albany School District and the City of Albany Police Department. The NAACP Corvallis Albany branch stands in solidarity with students and parents who have been impacted by trauma due to actions and reactions of the Greater Albany Public School, GAPS District, and the Albany Police Department, APD. The following statement addresses the decision to post armed, uniformed police officers at schools in Albany to welcome children on their first day of in-person learning. Our focus must be on the safety and mental health of the children and parents of GAPS to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. As our region watches the inexcusable actions of police officers on a national stage, we have been disappointed that the pain and fear in our most vulnerable populations has been largely overlooked, dismissed, and judged in our own communities here in Benton and Lynn counties. To those in our community who are feeling unwelcome, unheard, confused, or angry, those feelings are valid and we stand ready to offer any support that we are able to give. We encourage you to reach out with concerns around the events of the past few weeks. We will hold any communication with the utmost respect for your privacy and anonymity, if desired. We at the NAACP see you. We care about you, and we stand with you. In order to build a safer, more inclusive community for all, we must come together in these times and work towards that goal. We appreciate our relationships with GAPS and the APD, which have included ongoing, open conversations and healthy dialogue around these issues. Therefore, we were disappointed when we became aware that they had made the joint decision to post officers at schools as students arrived for their first day of in-person learning this school year. Both APD and GAPS have teams in place to offer a collective voice for how to best serve those who have been traditionally underserved. Members of our branch volunteer on both teams. They've continued to express the need to advance conversations that will yield positive social change. Our education district leaders have made the commitment to racial equity with the adoption of a regional racial equity proclamation, which reads in part, quote, "We recognize that our beliefs and values must match our actions. It is our collective stance that we must ensure school communities where all students have equal access and opportunities without discrimination based on race. Our mission is to confront, interrupt, and dismantle systems of inequity that persist for our students, staff, and families of color. We value the words of this proclamation and ask that the words be turned into action to surround and support each other towards these goals. We now call on all city leaders to, 1, de-escalate the increasing divisions in the city of Albany around race and policing that are harmful to members of our communities. 2, publicly educate and demonstrate how your organizations will indeed build bridges to ensure the safety and well-being of all residents." And that's time. Public comment number 28 from Amanda Daunt. I support Superintendent Melissa Goff and her commitment to make our community safe for all children. Many students and their families are experiencing and coping with trauma caused by blatant hate. Superintendent Goff has consistently advocated for these children despite negativity from the community. Albany has no place for racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other hate, and I applaud the superintendent for working towards that goal. Thank you, Amanda Daunt. I'll do the timer for you. Thank you. Yep. You got it? Yep. Public comment number 29. Amy Lucas. I, Amy Lucas of Albany, fully support the work of the superintendent and her efforts to make our community safe and healthy for all children. Please don't let the voices of a few change your course of action of equity for the youngest members of our community, our children. Sincerely, Amy Lucas. Public comment number 30, Christopher J. Miller. I am extremely concerned for the safety of our students in this city facing xenophobia, racism, homophobia, misogyny, and any other number of hateful attitudes. Please listen to them and raise their voices, make them heard. Public comment number 31, Susan Leonard. I am writing in strong support of Superintendent Goff and her efforts to make the Greater Albany Public Schools safe and welcoming to all children. Although my children are adults and I have lived in Albany for less than 2 years, as a responsible citizen, I understand the importance of being informed about and involved with the local school district. The health of a community is greatly affected by its public schools. I have been impressed with the superintendent's leadership and her commitment to creating a district culture which values the diversity of its students and works to ensure an equitable educational experience for all. Thank you for including my comments in tonight's board meeting. Respectfully, Susan Leonard. Public comment number 32, Joshua Yoder. Members of the board, recently a Black college student I am teaching came to our community to complete a community health assessment as part of an assignment. When school staff realized he would be walking around the area, they recognized a potential danger for him and insisted on walking around with him to ensure his safety. Though I am very grateful for this act, it does show that many recognize that Albany is not safe for all people. Children are no exception. We would be naive to think that the events happening nationally regarding racism, homophobia, xenophobia, other biases, and police violence are not affecting our community and our children. We have seen the hate-filled comments locally on social media, in our city council meetings, and biased acts of aggression within our own community in the last several weeks and years. All of this perpetuates trauma in our community and our children. It is our school board's job to recognize this and to protect our children. Much good work has been done by superintendent's leadership. Programs have been started. Previously quiet and silenced voices have been listened to and supported. And those working in the district are receiving essential training. This work must continue and be made a priority. It is not just minority communities that are affected by our community's current culture. The facts are clear. Racism, xenophobia, homophobia, and other biases negatively affect all members of the community. Please do your part to improve our community by standing up for all voices to be heard within our schools. In doing so, all will benefit. Thank you, Joshua Yoder. Public comment number 33, Heidi Scoville. I am writing in support of listening to minority voices and considering their experiences, particularly in the recent situation of the police presence at Back to School Day. I know that this can be a volatile topic, and these situations can be overwhelmed by oppositional majority voices. As a white person, and also as the daughter of a former state police officer, I want to step back and be willing to hear and give priority to those who often go unheard. Heidi Scoville. Public comment number 34, Denise Bigner. To whom it may concern, I wanted to take this chance to make my thoughts known to you since this school board meeting is occurring during such a pivotal time in our community. I have been following the events of the last few weeks. I feel compelled to say how much respect I have for Superintendent Goff and the action she not only took on the first day of school, but also consistently takes in the day-to-day. She goes out of her way to seek out and listen to all of the voices in our community. As I say this, I must point out that I'm a privileged person, typical in all aspects. I sometimes don't realize that others in my community aren't feeling the same comforts I feel living here, encountering law enforcement, walking down the street, etc. So when it's pointed out to me, I sometimes wonder, can that be true? These are the questions I want my leaders to ask themselves. These are the answers I want them to find. Superintendent Goff does just that. She takes the time and energy to make sure that the ones in the margins that may not speak up out of fear or may not be taken seriously out of ignorance, that their voices are elevated to equal status so that there can be a determination for the entire community, not just the majority of the community. Here's my soapbox. Our leaders need to be brave enough to see that old ways only work in old times. Our kids already know something is broken, and they need a community willing to see them as individuals with individual needs. They're looking to us to give them a safe space to grow. I have 2 kids in Gap schools. They tell me that things are not okay. They know. May we not fall back on the comforts of nostalgia. Nostalgia is not useful. We fall back on nostalgia at times when we are afraid of change. But in reality, we need strong, and brave leaders who can bring our educational spaces into a complex, nuanced future. We need leaders empowered by new understandings of the world we live in. We need leaders who truly see the diverse, varying array of children and families that live and do their lives in our community. I would like to see us as a community and as a school system refuse a "this has always worked in the past" way of thinking. I've seen Superintendent Goff be this kind of leader. We say we want fairness, equality, and all of these ideals. So then let's support those leaders that bring these things to their work. May we all allow new understandings to empower our future. We've come so far in many ways. Let us not turn back now. Thank you for your time. Denise Bigner. I'll read one more. Public comment number 35, Kristen Daly. I'm submitting this letter to the board today to share my respect for and complete faith in our superintendent, Melissa Goff. I moved to Albany 5 years ago because of the diversity of the people who call this city home. I am not a native Oregonian, and I was troubled by the high percentage of white residents in many of the surrounding areas. Albany seemed like a great place for us to raise our daughter, where she can appreciate and respect racial and ethnic differences. And I still believe that, in part because of the culture that Superintendent Goff is fostering at GAPS. When Melissa Goff was named our superintendent, it was like a ray of sunshine. Her policies to create safe, equitable, and inclusive spaces for all of our students are a huge step in the right direction in creating a stronger Albany. I've been to several meetings where Superintendent Goff spoke with families and community members about their concerns, and I have seen her genuine commitment to our students, all our students, and to their families. I cannot state it enough. Superintendent Goff is a huge asset to the Albany community. I am so proud that she is the superintendent of our city. Thank you, Kristen Daly. Yes.
Thank you, Jen. Reverend Diana Bismar Bailey. Although I appreciate the pause on police officers welcoming children back to school, I'm concerned about how we will move forward as a community in seeking a workable solution. It seems important that various voices be heard in a setting that welcomes all. A dialogue among parents of those who have resistance to police presence and those who appreciate the tradition of police welcoming students. Leaders of education system and police leadership can listen to all voices in an environment that is respectful of all. Although this will mean more meetings. For facilitated conversation, I believe the issue is important enough to warrant the necessary effort. This seems a possible way to move forward a solution that strengthens rather than divides our community. Reverend Diana Bismar Bailey. Public comment number 37. I support the work of Superintendent Goff and the school board in their efforts to make our schools a safe and healthy community for all students. I am concerned about students who face trauma caused by racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other forms of exclusion and hate. Thank you for listening to the voices and standing up for them. I am grateful for the work this board is doing to promote equity among its students. Lacey Kennedy. Public comment number 38. Travis Clark. I just wanted to let the board know that I support the work of superintendent and her efforts to make our community safe and healthy for all children. I am grateful for the work the board has done to promote equity, and I encourage the board to continue. Public comment number 39. First, I believe APD and GAPS has good intentions by wanting to welcome kids back. Some children are fearful of police, and a community engagement is a wonderful way to build bridges of trust. But if leaders really do care about easing fears and reaching out, you will listen to our communities when intentions don't match the impact. As far as I know, GAP seems to use trauma-informed care practices. Trauma-informed care practices, protection from some children, through no fault of their own, have reason to fear the sight of a police, and maybe instantly asking, is something wrong? Why are we here? What do they do? Who is in trouble? Am I going to be taken away from my parents, from my foster family? Is there a threat at school? Without the challenge of engaging beyond a handshake or high five. Continued drama happens and bridges are not built. Officers were at the front and center during drop-off, yet parents couldn't even get out of their cars. We didn't have the choice to hold their hand and walk them in the class and show them the officers were there to welcome them back. We had no choice, but we had to drop them off and drive away. Children did not have the choice to engage the police. Imagine if APD had set up an event at local parks and handed out stickers, popsicles for kids after their first day. Imagine if they had reached out to communities and invited them. Imagine if they had a drive-through, you made it back to school party with balloons and signs. I think it is time to reimagine community engagement that allows for choices and avoids causing more trauma. I extend an open hand to be part of it at work because many believe our superintendent and police chief are here to do work as well. More people have been reaching out to share their ideas and concerns. In regards to this event, the narrative seems to be that Superintendent Goff showed she listened to the voices. This isn't about two leaders. It is about gaps in APD. It isn't about views on policing or if the majority of children were happy to see them there. It is about centering the students, all the students, listening to the communities of unheard. It is what we have committed to.
So, Director Aguinaldo, if you make sure to read the whole letter, there are several sentences left out.
I apologize. Yeah, do you want to just reread it? I'm sorry if I
It's
missed a
hard to-
line or.
It's hard to follow sometimes on here too.
Should I reread? Should I keep going?
It's up to Kim.
I don't know which, you can reread that one if you'd like. We have time.
Or the last part.
Yeah.
I'll start off with trauma-informed care requires choice.
Right before, I do apologize if I missed
I think
one.
that was when you were
I'm
scrolling.
not the,
And I just want to make a comment too, that this was Jody Yoder. I think we mentioned the public comment number, but didn't say who it was. So it was from Jody Yoder. Yeah.
Officers were front and center during drop-off, yet parents couldn't even get out of their cars. We didn't have the choice to hold their hand, walk them to class, and show them the officer was there to welcome them back. We had no choice but to drop them off and drive away. Children did not have the choice to engage with the police. Imagine if APD had set up an event at local parks and handed out stickers and popsicles for kids after their first day. Imagine if they had reached out to communities and invited them. Imagine if they had a drive-through, you made it back to school party with balloons and signs. I think it's time to reimagine community engagement that allows for choice and avoids causing more trauma. I extend an open hand to be part of that work. Because many believe that our new superintendent and police chief are here to do that work as well, more people have been reaching out to share their ideas and concerns. In regards to this event, the narrative seems to be that Superintendent Goff showed she is listening to those voices. Chief Harnden did not. This isn't about the two leaders. It isn't about gaps versus APD. It isn't about your views on policing or if the majority of children were happy to see them there. This is about centering the students, all the students, listening to communities who feel unheard. Isn't that who we have committed to? Public comment number 40, Tina Dodge. Dear GAPS School Board, first, thank you for all your hard work and service to the school district. We are living in extraordinary times, which calls for extraordinary leadership. I believe Melissa Goff has been that leader for our district, a leader that understands and values diversity and has worked to bring GAPS policies and practices to reflect and acknowledge that the district needs to do better. The added benefit of this leadership style is it benefits everyone. Unfortunately, in Albany, you know when a person is on the right path to progress when the person wanting Albany/Lynn County to evolve starts to feel the heat of the status quo that refuses. Albany needs a reality check. As welcoming as Albany likes to see itself, it's actually contrary to what those community members feel that who do not reflect the white majority. Elementary schools in Albany have 23% of students that identify as Latino compared to 21% in high school. Increasing diversity is our future. Melissa sees this as an asset and a strength to our district and is working diligently to prepare all staff and all teachers to be ready, as GAP staff and teachers do not reflect the racial diversity of their student body. I am grateful for Melissa and her assistant superintendent, Lisa Harlan's efforts to move GAPs in the right direction, a future where equity, diversity, and inclusion practices are essential. As a parent, I have found myself as an ally and advocate for the Spanish-English dual immersion program while balancing and holding the district accountable to ensure the program has the resources needed to be successful. I have found current district leadership to be transparent and authentic, which is exactly what GAPS needs at this time. As a parent, I own my responsibility of ensuring those in power look in the mirror and recognize their own responsibility in ensuring equal opportunities for all students to succeed and all parents to engage in their children's education. Even in these tumultuous times, I am excited for where the district is headed in establishing equity policies. I ask the school board to be accountable and show support for Superintendent Melissa Goff in her efforts to improve the district's equity, diversity, and inclusive practices. Thank you, Tina Dodge. Public comment number 41. Mark Leonard. As an active Albany community member for nearly 2 years and a longtime public school supporter in our previous district, I'd like to express my appreciation for the excellent work and positions of Superintendent Goff. Our children are our future, and our students and their families must be heard with respect. Diversity and inclusion are our strengths, and I stand fully behind Melissa Goff. I'm happy to finish the last two if you'd like.
Sure. Thank you.
Public comment number 42, Miriam Cummins. Dear Madam Chair and Board, I am writing this public comment as a parent of whose children attend Greater Albany Public School and not as an elected official. I would like to say first and foremost that I appreciate the work that Superintendent Goff is doing for our school district. Her work in diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important, and I cannot stress enough how important it is that this work needs to continue. I do want to bring up a matter that I feel the school board should have done their due diligence in communicating to parents whose children attend GAPS. It is the school district's responsibility that there is a clear path of communication between the school district and the families in GAPS. That communication was not done prior to the first day of school regarding police officers and fire department being in schools. I do have to admit I was a little shocked to see a police officer at my kid's school, and it did set off some red flags. However, later in the day, it was indicated that this presence caused trauma to many of our BIPOC children and families. I believe that it was your duty to ensure that the school administration had sent out an email prior to school's opening to let families know that the presence of police officers and the fire department were going to be at the school to welcome our students. I understand that the stress and excitement of going back to school may have caused this to slip between the cracks, but it is your duty to ensure that the communication is given to families and ask those questions and how this is being applied to the equity lens that you have implemented. I do not believe this falls on Superintendent Goff, but mostly it falls on you. You did not ask those questions. You did not ensure there was clear communication to parents, and thus falls on you. The trauma that is caused to many of the families because of the lack of empathy and communication is what made this issue bigger than it should have been. If you had simply done your due diligence in ensuring that communication was done, many of our families did not know this was a tradition. I certainly did not. And there were many new families entering the school district that did not know this either. I'm writing this letter because as elected and appointed officials of Greater Albany Public Schools, you should have asked these questions and not let it fall on Superintendent Goff when it was your duty to ensure that all voices were heard, represented, and accounted for. Take responsibility and do better next time. Miriam. And public comment number 43, Rod Bigner. To the Greater Albany Public Schools Board, as a parent of 2 students who have attended GAPS school since 2013, I would like to offer my gratitude for your service to the children of our community. I'm sure your job is challenging during typical times, and this past year of pandemic has made it immeasurably complex. I appreciate all the work this board has done to promote equity and inclusion in our schools, and fully in support of Superintendent Goff's efforts to make our school community safe for all children. I encourage you to continue this work despite the efforts of those who appear to be political opportunists who have sought to create a divisive conversation in order to promote their own personal interests. Please continue to keep the focus where it belongs, on the children, each of them, and their personal interests. Thank you again, Rod Bigner.
Yes. So I just want to take a moment and thank everyone. But that is a lot of public comments, and we greatly appreciate them. All of the school board directors, the superintendent, assistant superintendent have also received a large volume of emails on many different issues and many different sides of those issues. And I just want to say that we are hearing all of you. If we haven't been able to get responses out to all of them, it's just there's a lot of them for us to get through, and some we weren't sure maybe needed responses, but we appreciate the fact that people are sharing their concerns and their opinions and their thoughts with us along the way. It does help us to know and help gauge what the community is feeling and hearing. So we appreciate that. All right. I did want to, just in light of the volume, and I think the fact that we've had talk about how we're going to do our meetings going forward, I wanted to just pose something for our board members to maybe think about or talk about now, or we can plan to discuss it at our next meeting. But I do think we need to talk about the fact that since we've been doing our board meetings virtually, we've been allowing for public comment to be submitted. And that's been great, because I think we have in the past had a lot of people who couldn't attend personally our meetings, and therefore didn't have or feel like they had a way to submit their comments and concerns to us. And so I think we had been talking as a group about wanting to continue that practice of being able to allow the public comment to come in that way. On the other side of that, we also have to keep in mind our meetings that we need to actually get through the board work as well. And so as we start to see more volume coming in, we do want to hear those and look at those. Again, I mentioned earlier, all the board members do read all of those comments before the board meetings. So us reading them aloud basically puts them out for the public who's listening and watching. But as always, we always put all of those comments, especially those that are written, into our minutes so everybody can see them in their entirety. And that does help us be able to kind of deal with the time. So as a board, I think we might want to discuss, and I think we had some recommendations from OSBA and other places recently that other boards have been encountering the same thing, same issues of amount of time to be able to do it, that we consider maybe putting a cap on a time frame overall. And we can talk about what we think is reasonable for that, if it's an hour of our meeting, and we maybe decide on something like that. Again, if we can't get through everything, then we would make sure that they're publicly accessible through the minutes. So just, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that now you want to share, or if it's something we want to bring back to a board meeting, but we do have pre-planning on Friday. So if it's something we thought we would want to put on the next board meeting. Yes, we don't have pre-planning this Friday, do we? It's going to be
Our
in
next
2
board
weeks.
meeting isn't until May
17th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of time. Were there thoughts on that now, or do we want to think about ideas and come prepared for maybe having a discussion at our next meeting?
Feels like a good opportunity to use our equity lens too, and just really kind of look at, like you're saying in the very beginning, but really look on. I'm blown away because this is people who have never ever. We see some similar voices. This is people who never ever have reached out to us, and I do apologize if I messed up. I'm sorry, I'm not that strong reader out loud. My job as an advocate is to read your words, and I apologize if I do mess up, because those are your words that need to be heard. But I think it would be good. Maybe if a couple of us could talk to Elaine Richter and hey, we're looking at this. Just
how we do it and how we still, because I think we all agree we want to hear all of those comments, which we do. We hear them. The question is whether they need to be read publicly or whether they can be posted publicly and still have the same impact, so that we can get through the board's work and those few meetings that we have, and the little amount of time we have to do it. But
I'd be interested to hear what OSBA has to say, what other boards have grappled with this. I trust all of us read these emails. I know that. It just has some benefit to hear the public to hear kind of a summary of what is being said. That's the only thing I miss if we don't read them. And I don't know how to tackle that. You could do a summary of what subjects we have heard over the past. I don't know how to deal with that, but I know we all read them, and it informs our decisions and our discussions. So I don't think we'll be missing that by not reading out loud. It's just the benefit to the public.
There are a couple things that you could consider that other districts do. So one is you have a 3-minute time period, so you can always shorten that 3 minutes to 2 minutes, which cuts a third off of the time that we have right now. The other piece is, as Chair Butzner was saying, and that is more commonly used in by boards for situations like this, where there are meatier issues within the community and you tend to hear a lot of feedback around those issues, where there is a cap that you set where public comment will go no longer than, and you set whatever that time frame is. And then that time frame is set regarding public comment. You don't change it every time. So it's not like an hour this week and half an hour next week. But so you set a kind of a cap on how long you would spend reading public comment. And then, as Chair Butzner indicated, all of the public comments would then go into the minutes. Now, if once you return to public comment in person, what that means is kind of the third way of doing that, and this would be true too if you had the public reading over Zoom, is that you may allow a certain number of folks to sign up for public comment and cap after that number. And then you can choose to say, so after the first 20 have signed up, we'll take no more public comments than 20. However, anyone who submits before noon, we will read those ourselves for our consideration, but they won't be read in public. You won't have an opportunity to speak. So there are a number of approaches that you can take that can help in these circumstances. And I appreciate Director Aganaga's point of their names. I appreciate much of what was said, and I don't recognize everybody's name by a long shot. And so I was really pleased to see the new names that we're seeing in public comment and hearing those voices.
I was just going to say there's a certain accountability piece for us hearing it. And I think that for the public to see us listening to those comments, and that's something that I don't want to lose. So, submission for record is something that I would likely be in favor of. But I would like to hear what more districts are doing and some of the ideas that you're proposing. It's almost 8:20 now, and we have a lot to get to tonight. And so, but there's certainly the benefit of hearing the community on the variety of issues is really important.
I have even heard that there are some that are considering doing just public comment meeting, or almost like we do where we're asking for public forums, for people to come to. It's almost like having those in advance of a board meeting when there's certain topics, just so that you have that separate time for people, and that's all it is that public comment time. I think there's just some options that we might want to consider kind of adjusting for the meeting's sake and our, the time's sake of how few times we get to necessarily connect to do the work too. So is there someone that's interested in maybe doing a little bit of the legwork or research, or checking in maybe with OSBA and stuff, and then maybe we can bring some information back to the next board meeting and we can discuss it in the hopes of then maybe if we do want to make changes at all, we do that at the following meeting. Is anybody interested in diving into
look
some?
into it and provide, gathering what I find.
That'd be great. And I know you can, Kristen Miles is a really good resource at OSBA. She would have some input probably about what other districts are doing, because she and I have talked about it before. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me too. So sounds good. Thank you, guys. All right. So we will move on to board business. And we have a couple of proclamations here. The first is our Teacher Appreciation Week proclamation. And I think we were going to have Vice Chair Thompson take these. That'd be great.
Okay, proclamation recognizing Teacher Appreciation Week, Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Education, proclamation number -6. Whereas teachers mold future citizens through guidance and education, and whereas teachers encounter students of wildly differing backgrounds, and whereas our country's future depends upon providing quality education to all students, and whereas teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service, and whereas our community recognizes and supports its teachers in educating the children of this community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Directors proclaim May 3rd through the 7th, 2021 to be Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Greater Albany Public School Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join with it in personally expressing appreciation to our teachers for their dedication and devotion to their work. Okay. That was one. The second one is proclamation recognizing National School Nurse Day. Greater Albany Public School Board of Education, proclamation number 2020/21-7. Whereas children are the future, and by investing in them today, we are ensuring our world for tomorrow. And whereas all students have a right to have their health needs safely met while in the school setting, and whereas children today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in school, and whereas school nurses have served a critical role in improving public health and ensuring students' academic success for more than 100 years, and whereas school nurses are professional nurses that advance the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievements of all students by serving on the front lines and providing a critical safety net for our nation's most fragile children. And whereas school nurses act as a liaison to the school community, parents, and healthcare providers on behalf of children's health by promoting wellness and improving health outcomes for our community's children. And whereas school nurses are members of school-based mental health teams, and whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in a position to make a positive difference for children every day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Greater Albany Public School Board of Directors proclaims May 12th, 2021 to be National School Nurse Day. And be it further resolved that the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join with it personally, expressing appreciation for our school nurses for their dedication and devotion to our work. Adopted the 19th day of April, 2021.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think we could have a better time
Yeah.
to appreciate our teachers and to appreciate our school nurses. They have all had some crazy years and year in particular. And every one of those folks are doing a phenomenal job for the district. And we greatly, greatly appreciate you all. So thank you for everything you're doing. Any other comments before we move on? No? Okay. We are going to move into the superintendent evaluation, which at this point is a summary of the recent evaluation the board conducted, and we will have Director Ward take this one.
Certainly. This is a summary of the annual evaluation of Superintendent Melissa Goff by the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Directors for the 2020-21 school year. The board was assisted in its work by Krista Parent, COSA consultant. The board used input from the following 3 tools for its evaluation of Superintendent Goff's performance. Number 1, Superintendent Goff's self-evaluation. Number 2, summary results of the feedback survey sent to district-level administrators, association leadership, and the executive board secretary. Number 3, each board member's individual evaluation survey. Each of the 3 tools rated Superintendent Goff's performance on 7 standards of leadership as outlined by ODE. Both the self-evaluation and the board's individual surveys also considered her professional goals. On each of these goals and standards, Melissa was ranked as being accomplished, effective, developing, or needing improvement. The consensus of the board is that Melissa is accomplished or effective regarding all goals and standards. The board acknowledges the exceptional circumstances of the past year as GAPS, along with the rest of the world, has struggled to meet the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. From the beginning, Melissa has centered student safety. The decision to close our schools was likely the most difficult professional decision Melissa has ever made. Yet, within weeks, technology, curriculum, and food were being delivered to our students. This effort continued with increasing effectiveness, even in light of ever-changing and often conflicting mandates from the state, until finally we have been able to welcome our students back to school. Melissa is a courageous, tireless, compassionate leader. Instituting regular forums with parents, staff, and most recently students have allowed her to meaningfully interact with those she serves even when in-person interactions were impossible. Communication and fiscal accountability are both areas that have improved under Melissa's leadership. The board is pleased that her demonstrable commitment to equity was recognized in her being awarded the D. Joan Collison Distinguished Service Award by the NAACP. Her efforts to listen to all voices is expanding our collective understanding in a way that benefits all students. The board appreciates that Melissa recognizes opportunities for growth. We look forward to the time when COVID will be a thing of the past. We trust that Melissa will build on the lessons learned from and the opportunities provided by a year spent in pandemic. As things return to normal, she will have the opportunity to restart the district's strategic planning and to strengthen relationships with families, staff, and community partners. Quotes from the feedback and board surveys illustrate the impact Melissa is having on our district. Quote, "She is an effective and heartfelt communicator who genuinely wants to hear others' opinions, even if they are wide-ranging and differ from her own, and gather evidence in order to make informed and caring decisions. Her ability to think creatively and change plans, often at a moment's notice, are such an asset, especially this year. Her willingness to support students in all realms of the school day, not just through traditional classroom learning, has helped us to expand the services and opportunities for our students, families, and staff," unquote. Quote, "She is not afraid to be vulnerable. She will sit with a problem until she understands the various sides of it," end quote. Quote, "I am so grateful that Melissa has been at our helm during this difficult year. The courage and strength that this year has required are unfathomable," unquote. In short, quote, "Superintendent Goff has performed with integrity and pursued priorities the board asked her to focus on while navigating the challenges of an historic public health crisis," end quote. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate those words. As I've said before, I so appreciate serving as the superintendent here in Greater Albany. And certainly no one who's been a superintendent this year in the world has been able to say at their evaluation process that they knew what they were doing and knew what to expect as the year went through. I could not do the job I do if I didn't have Assistant Superintendent Harlan as my partner in the work. She makes a tremendous difference in strengthening my skill set, and I think we complement each other well, which helps better serve our students and certainly helps our staff. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate serving for all of you. And I appreciate the detail with which you went into the evaluation process and giving the voices that you did. And I'm very happy that we have kids back in school as of today, K-12. So pretty exciting.
Thank you. So it's back to you for the superintendent report.
All right. Thank you, Chair Butzner. I did make a couple quick notes to start off the report. I just want to say that I appreciate the notes of the public comment, and it is clear that our community, the positive change of elevating and listening to marginalized voices is overwhelmingly supported by our public comment tonight. And I think that's an important, very important thread for this board not to lose, and for future boards not to lose as well. That we are smarter, we are more creative, we are stronger when all voices are heard. Our learning environments are stronger. We're better critical thinkers. Each of our students individually is a better critical thinker when they hear multiple voices and multiple perspectives. So I appreciate hearing that feedback, particularly from those community members, as I mentioned earlier, with whom I don't have a close working relationship. We may have, I appreciate the parent forums are meeting the needs of some of our community members, and I hope that that's a benefit to them, continues to be a benefit. The report tonight, I won't make it super long. I do want to shout out a couple things. One, I cannot disregard the excitement of today being the first day that marks all of our K-12 students who have chosen in-person instruction have had an opportunity for in-person instruction now as of today with our high school starting. So that is a huge milestone to celebrate together. Next week, we will see K through 8 go into that fuller day, 4 days a week as well. And so I really feel that our community will feel that sense of normalcy that is beginning to return at our school sites, which is when you go and visit a school, walking through the schools, the staff, I think, are maybe happier than the students to have them back, which is so great to see. The ribbon cutting ceremonies, we've had 3 since my last superintendent's update. And so the opening of Meadow Ridge through their ribbon cutting was just so exciting to see that facility for our kids is truly one that's going to grow with the kids and focuses on growth just through the build itself, with all of the trees, and it's beautiful inside and out. The south remodel, and certainly the west, significant remodel. Both are so focused on natural light and how can instruction be improved by the way that the buildings are designed. And I think that seeing students in those spaces is going to make them even more enjoyable for all of us. And so knowing that the kids were back today, and I wish I'd been out at the schools today, but wasn't able to go for the day. So I'm sure it was exciting. I'm sure we'll hear from our student board reporters. I do want to read a couple items just directly from my text. During all of this great work, however, we have not been without challenges. Certainly, we have work to do in better serving our historically marginalized and underserved students and families. Centering our decisions on our students and working with our established partners both help us make more inclusive and welcoming choices as we plan events, projects, or pathways of our work. When working recently with Albany Police Department, we failed to do this during planning. Clearly, our decision negatively impacted some of our students and families, as did the resulting social media firestorm and other community actions that followed. It is the responsibility of GAPS leaders, particularly for me, to chart a path forward that honors our commitment to every student and builds community. We believe in an Albany community that is safe for and inclusive of all. Finally, we are disheartened, unfortunately, to learn that Lynn County is once again above 200 cases, which means we've moved into the yellow category, and is important for all of you as board members to be aware. At this time, the biggest change to our students and staff will be that COVID-19 testing will need to be available in our secondary schools by the end of this 2-week period. Because we have already begun back in in-person learning, we do not have limitations in operating. though we do know that community spread is impacting our ability to operate without interruptions. We have already been quarantining entire cohorts of students, and if we in the community do not curb the spread, this will continue to interrupt learning for our kids. We highly encourage everyone to continue to wear masks in public, whether you're personally vaccinated or not, to help us in slowing the spread of COVID-19. And I can say that I know that our students are so happy to see each other, and all of us are feeling just that sense of seeing the end of the line. And the fact that we just haven't crossed it is just something to keep in mind. And our kids are doing such a great job at school. I'm so proud of the work that they've been doing, and just making sure that people are making good decisions outside of school as well is extremely important. So know that we're continuing to watch that. We did have our first school who did COVID-19 testing last week, and that went well and smoothly, and it was for younger kids. So if kids younger than high school can do it, high school kids can do it as well. So
Can you give a little bit more information? So when it says the required testing, what does that look like for the schools? I just
Sure.
want everybody to hear
Absolutely,
kind of what
right.
that
I think
means,
that's a
because I
really-
can hear everybody going, "Are my kids going to get tested every day?"
good, thank you. Yeah.
So required testing essentially means that we will be required at all of our secondary schools to have rapid tests available for students or staff. And so there is parent permission that is required. And as a parent in the community too, we got forms that you could say, yes, you have my permission or not. If a student becomes symptomatic at school and a parent refuses a test, that's fine. They'll just need to come pick their child up to take them home or somewhere else to get tested. But the state requirement above 200 is essentially that you have it ready and available for use at all of your schools for students and staff.
And so if you do a rapid test, that would give results back
Within 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Mhm.
So you would know as they're symptomatic if
Mhm.
we've had a case.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for.
And this is
Yes,
just,
absolutely.
this is just for testing individuals who are symptomatic. We're not doing,
Correct. We're not doing mass
Tests.
testing. Everybody's not going to get tested. There's not an every other student who would be tested. No, it's only for those students who are symptomatic.
and this will only be at this point of impacting our secondary schools in Lynn County, not Benton County.
It will impact all of our schools.
All of our
And so we will, as a district, and we have the good fortune of straddling two counties. As a district, once one of your counties hits that threshold, you have to make that available at all of your schools.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Secondary, so middle and high school, but we will have them available at all of our schools. So hats off to our district nurses for having those and doing the training long before we needed it, so.
I had one thing. I was going to save it for board reports, but it talks about it in the superintendent's report. Please take this as the largest compliment I've ever given you two ladies. Our one-on-one a week ago, we talked about think big this summer. And I think we almost spent our whole time on that. As a father of a 9-year-old, I know he plans to spend 40 hours a week on Minecraft during the summer, but he's a struggled learner. He has a hard time in school. And the program that you have designed and your staff has supported is astonishing. It's what I want in all your school. It fills the whole gaps for me. So many children are going to be able to eat lunch and dinner because of this program. So many children are going to have adult supervision because of this program. I know we don't always have them. And I wrote this in a letter. I will send it to you too. But I wanted to publicly tell you thank you so much, because so many children are going to be fostered in warm, safe locations this summer while continuing their education because of your leadership. I think we didn't cover it enough in our last board meeting, but Think Big Summer is an enormous accomplishment. Thank you so much. For putting this together. I know it wasn't easy. And Russ, your transportation people, I mean, they're always my favorite, but they do. They do everything. And this provides jobs to some of our staff that wouldn't have a job during the summer. and they don't have to do those less earning jobs. They get to keep their benefits this summer. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. This means a lot. I know especially for some of our communities that we have a hard time getting into. You knocked it out of the park.
Thank you, Director Argonaga. I appreciate that very much. And our partners, honestly, are pulling, really credit our partners with the biggest burden, because all we needed to do was bring people together into a Zoom space and say, hey, we've got this great idea. If you could make anything happen, what would you make happen? And they had the ideas. They knew what they wanted to do, and they're lifting that burden and doing a great job. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right. So we have our monthly financial report. All right. Jim is
Director Scherzinger.
I was going to try to say his last name, but it's not going to go well. Jim, no, come on up. While he's getting to the table,
Fortunately, they're not going to evaluate me. All right.
I still
I mean,
love
falling
the format.
asleep in the meeting. So the financial report you have, and it is good news, I think. Ashley has produced a projection going forward to the end of the year. And the good news is about a $1 million increase in the owing balance from the last report. Mostly, it's from lower costs. If you actually compared line by line with the last report, especially from substitute costs. I mean, one thing surprising, even given what's happened, how far down they are. That there also was a somewhat higher high-cost disability state school fund grant that helped. The funny thing was that we really didn't know what to expect when we went into it, and she did all the work, but I had some good conversations with her about it, especially about the state school fund. We think there's still a lot of risk in the number, in this sense that the last report we got from the state, we just got a new one, yes, like a week ago. So right when we were doing this. And if you believe that report, we'd get about another $1 million more than this. But we don't believe that that's going to happen. I mean, there were some things that we thought were clearly wrong. And that if they, in fact, give us the money, which they would if they were basing the number for this year on that report, about $1 million more, we figured they would find the mistake and we'd have to pay it back next year. So if you see something, the next time they're coming out again in May and it says we have $1 million more, don't believe it. We're just going to go into the budget and say we have to pay it back. So you don't really have that money. We have to keep it, unless something big happens between now and then. And who knows in this day and age. So 9 days from now, we're going to have the budget for the budget committee, recommended budget, and we're working hard on it. Putting in a new system. We're having all the problems that you normally have when you do that. And, but I think it'll be ready. And if not, then you can evaluate me. No, it'll be ready. And I feel really good about it. And I think we'll have some really good discussions about priorities. I mean, the big thing really is you'll get the opportunity of spending more time talking about grant funds than any district really has had, and I think that's an exciting thing.
Any questions for Jim?
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work you're doing, by the way, too. We've had a lot of changes, a lot of information coming at us in formats that are easily digestible, and I'm excited to see how the budget information comes to us this year as well. So,
All right.
thank you.
Is there action needed on this?
Yep.
Okay.
Actually, I think there is.
To
motion-
accept
there
the
is
financial
motion to
report.
approve. This is
You are right.
normally,
There is. Thank you for asking.
it's normally been part of our consent agenda.
That's true. It has been.
Yeah, so we'll
That's
pull it out
why.
separately.
Mhm.
So then I'll just move to approve the financial report as presented.
So we have a motion to approve the financial report as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And you're right, I was thinking it was down in our consent.
Right.
No problem.
And that moves us into our board liaison reports. Are there any that anyone, I'm going to let you guys pipe in if you have a report to provide.
Well, we should update this list one more time because I'm doing the bargaining on behalf of both associations are bargaining together this time around. And I'm representing the school board and have done two meetings so far. Fascinating. It's nothing like money being involved that causes you to hear all the real true stories of how people feel like about their job and their how the school day goes. Unassuming Larry kind of has led us through a couple sessions so far. It's fascinating. It's interest-based bargaining where you try to figure out you each side gets a chance to really delineate over each subject where they're coming at it from, and perhaps it leads to an understanding that's different than just trying to meet in the middle per se, as like maybe you would think of bargaining as typically. So it's fascinating. We have a long way to go. Not really board liaison, but I went to both of the ribbon cuttings and for the high schools, and that's great to see the buildings. And in fact, they're being used right now. Just good positive vibes all around. That's what I've got on my. The board policy review committee has met since the last meeting, and we're working through section J, which is students. I think we're just about done with section J finally. You'll see an example later on the policy before us on elections. That's very similar to what we're doing in the policy review committee. That came about because we had a policy in our total policy book that said that you can't file to run for both the K through 12 school board and ESD sport on the same ballot. And that was way outdated. It had been a long time ago that the state legislature had allowed that to happen. And so talking with OSBA, they said that whole policy has some updates to it. And that's really kind of what we're doing with each policy as we go. They're being led by OSBA, or OSBA is kind of kicking off our, hey, here's some that, you need, this is old stuff and you need to review it. And we have discussions about where people come at that policy from various angles. But it's just, this policy you see later is just a great example of what we're doing with every single policy in our book.
One thing I would recommend maybe that we look at doing either through our superintendent meetings or the one-on-ones is maybe going through this list now that things are starting to kind of reopen and things are happening. And again, it really might be helpful. Some of us got assigned to these in the middle of the pandemic and haven't had an opportunity to really work on these. And it would be helpful for us, I think, to engage with the staff members that are also working with those groups and have maybe been working with those groups for a while. I think it might be a good opportunity for us to start looking at those relationships in those meetings again. That said, you also have 3 board members that won't be returning in June. And so as you transition those, I think it'll be really important to keep those starting to move and continuing the movement on those relationship building for those meetings as we go forward. Yeah. Hasn't been able to be a focus for either side, I think, too much, but be a good thing to get. Any other board member comments?
So we've been attending the Jackson Street board meetings, and good news is we are going to remodel the Albany House. It's going to allow more ADA, more room for homeless youth, which is a sad issue because when we think of homeless youth, we don't usually think of 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds, and it happens in Albany very much so. And unfortunately, a lot of our homeless youth are LGBTQ. They're minority or underrepresented. Those numbers are a lot larger than you would actually think. Heather at FACT has done an amazing job representing the district. Just extraordinary compared to relationships with other partners. They've been trying to do a lot of outreach. And so not necessarily if you are welcome into the shelter, but if you need help, if you're in between, we've been doing a lot of outreach, and GAPS has been a very large supporter in that. And so I don't know where they always get the money from, but they do a very good job. So that is really good to see that relationship grow.
So I'll just echo what Director Thompson had to say about the ribbon cutting. I've been fortunate that my schedule has allowed me to be all 3. And there's kind of like a special feeling about each one because, like with Meadow Ridge, it took longer to build and we finally got it open and then we couldn't put students into it. So it was just neat to finally see that open and ready to be used as a school. With South Albany, of course, we had the fire. And with West Albany, it was just such a large undertaking. And I was really, I was grateful for the tributes that were given to Principal Ersborn because it really embodies so much of her vision and dedication to that project and to her school in general. I toured West Albany with band students, and they were just so blown away. They were just so excited. And I have to say, so I've been sitting I was elected the same year that the bond measure passed, and so I've been pretty involved with this. But my daughter said to me, she was like, "Yay, no more health classes in the boys' locker room." And I looked at her, I said, "You were having health classes in the boys' locker room?" And she said, "Yeah, that there's a hallway to a classroom there, and that's what they were using." And so I'm just,
I can see where that would be an upgrade.
this looks pretty good then, doesn't it? So really just re-emphasized how much we needed all of these improvements and additions to our infrastructure. So grateful to the on-site personnel and the district personnel and of course HMK and all of our contractors and partners who have just seen us through from start to finish. Really cool. I would just say, going back to school, so our middle schools are still in hybrid model at NAMS. That means, well, we've got the morning and the afternoon cohorts, and of course they're kind of sharing physical space with NAYS, which also has morning cohorts. So there's been a lot of work on like traffic control. Anyway, so I got to volunteer there the first week, just helping with greeting and the movement of vehicles and children. Like clockwork. I mean, well-oiled machine, just really well prepared, well organized, and excited, enthusiastic kids. And my daughter was back to West today. Great day. It's nice to be back. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was very lucky, thank you to Superintendent Goff for setting up some school visits. I was able to go to Albany Options And thank you to Mr. Hannon, Principal Hannon, and to Mrs. Harriman for taking time to talk to us and share the incredible things they're doing. We were able to see students in their learning and engaging. It was just really just felt wonderful to see students there. After that, we went to Calpuya. So thank you, Mr. Heisley and Mr. Tim, the Dean of Students, for helping us, showing us around, and able to pop our head in some classrooms. And so that was very exciting. Then we went to Sunrise. I got to show Mrs. Goff my former classroom, room 15, which is one of those stinky hot rooms that. So I want to thank Ms. Hodges, who currently resides in that classroom, and Principal Jordan and Miss Boland for taking some time to talk to me and just answer our questions and find out how it's going. This was in the first few days of kids being back, so we were really curious about how kids were doing with following the expectations, how staff was feeling, and morale just was, everyone was feeling tired but excited. And so that was really great to see. And it was just great to be back in schools. So thank you.
Fun.
Well, Esperanza, we'll hand over to you since LJ is off playing tennis tonight.
Okay, I'm just gonna go over what me and Hunter talked about, and then I'll let you know what the students were talking to me about and what they reached out to me about. So first thing was 9th grade. Looks like the freshmen came in on the 15th and 16th, and they began their day with like a Zoom class with Hunter, which was pretty great. He was finally able to like see some of those faces, get to know some of those kids. Flight teachers did a map activity to get to know like where the classes are, so they had to figure out where to go, and they had to go. It was 8 to 12 students in a group with like 2 adults, and they went on a tour and stopped to chat with several staff members and to see what was going on around campus. Basically the tour that we had, at least I had at the end of 8th grade, that they'd never really got. And then cheer and dance performed for them along during the tour. They ended up back in their flight classes, and Sources of Strength came out and did activities with them and like focused on their mental health. Wanted to see how the first day was going, which I think was a very important part of that first day for them. You know, it can be overwhelming at times. And then 300 pride cards were given out to students on the first day. And pride cards you basically just get if you're being kind, generous, you're following the rules, doing what you're supposed to do. And then that day ended with like a big closure from the principal, like a talking to. And then today, everyone came back, and you have no idea. Like, I honestly want to cry right now. It was great. I saw their friends, and like, I'm not gonna lie, it was really overwhelming to go back. And like, at first, I was like, "Oh, am I even here? Like, am I really back on campus right now?" Because it had been a year, and like, I felt like a scared little freshman because I didn't know where my first class was. And I'm like a minute late. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. Someone help me. But it was great to see some of those people and just to have that interaction with the teacher. Definitely wasn't used to waking up an hour early before school.
Right.
It's usually like 10 to 15 minutes. But it was great to be back, and I wasn't going to go back. Obviously, I've been very adamant about that, but I got my first vaccine. My grandparents were both vaccinated fully, so we felt like we were at a state where we didn't have to worry too much. And we had a total of 945 students enrolled to go on campus, and it was honestly, Mr. Hunter said it was funny watching the upperclassmen scattering around looking for their classes because he knows we all forgot where it was. Honestly, he's not wrong. That was great. But you definitely saw that interaction with the teachers that you never got on Zoom. I met people that I never knew. Like, I obviously had worked with them in classes, but most of them didn't turn on their cameras just because of different things. And I got to see them face to face, and it was great. And honestly, when I got there, it didn't feel real. Like, it was a dream, but I got through the day. We're here. I'm excited to go back tomorrow. So that's with school. And the only thing I got from students is the calendar. There had been a huge post. I think that's why you guys got so many things about public comments about that. It had gone over Snapchat. It was a huge thing. And then everyone came to me. The only thing students hated was the whole has to be year round. Because they're just not used to it. They feel like it's too much right now, especially with everything going on. The air conditioning was a huge thing. They didn't want to feel sweaty and just not good in class, you know. And then sports was another, which obviously has been stated, mostly just repeating. And the last one was working, because a lot of the upperclassmen I know are working in the summer. And that's all I really got. That's awesome.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right. I did have a little update from LJ, who was unable to attend tonight. He really is. He's at a tennis match we hope he's doing very well at. And he was disappointed he couldn't be here for the first in-person meeting for sure, but we will read his statement. He said, "Here's my student report. Just as many of you are, I am overflowing with joy as we finally get back to school buildings. I want to start with giving a huge shout out to Mrs. Osborne and the West Albany administrators and staff for making our coming back feel so comfortable and safe, as well as a big shout out to my leadership and class officer peers for putting on not one but two fantastic freshman days. We successfully did a virtual assembly as well as distance tours for the freshmen. We are doing a great job following COVID guidelines. I did not feel uncomfortable or unsafe at any point in the day. I cannot say enough to how amazing the new building is. It is a great place for students to hang out and feel comfortable in a new space. Spring sports are continuing, and the West Albany Drama is starting up a production of the musical Charlie Brown. I could go on and on for days about how exciting coming back to school is for me and my peers. Exclamation point. I'm sure he wouldn't have said that, but I cannot wait to see what comes with the in-person school for the weeks to come and can't wait to share more. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I just have to say, those two student reports were the very best news I've had in 14 months. So thank you very much. That's fantastic.
I have to head out now because, I got to wake up at 6 a.m. for school.
It takes 2 hours to get ready, right? So now they all care what they
I wish. I got to go across town to pick up my brother because he lives with my dad. I live with my grandma. So it's like a whole, I'm trying to be nice. I'm really trying to save you here. You don't have to be a freshman riding the bus, but.
You're so sweet.
Aww.
That's really kind of you.
Thank you for
Thanks,
joining us.
Esponza.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right. So that has us, we don't have any committee, community, and school presentations for this evening. So we are into our consent agenda, and we had personnel and minutes provided. Were there any comments, edits to minutes or things that anybody wanted to address? If not, the consent agenda passes. And that brings us to our old business. And the very first one on our agenda is the 2021-22 school calendar. As you all know, this is coming back to us from our last meeting. And Director Larry, did you have anything you wanted to provide at this point,
Yes.
additional input? Okay.
Yes, just a little bit, just some orientation.
Yes.
There are 5 documents in the board packet. Superintendent Goff, I don't know if you wanted to make any comments about the parent forum. I'm sure the board members had an opportunity to look through them.
Yeah, so comments from the parent forum are included within the agenda item for your review. I would say that I will add that both in the student forum and in the parent forum as well, overwhelming support was for keeping the same calendar. Students actually saw things with greater flexibility than our parent feedback did. Students had about 50% of them wanted to stay with the calendar with which everyone was familiar, and then 25% wanted to look at year-round, and 25% wanted somewhere in the middle. So, but parents overwhelmingly felt that there was an interest in keeping with a usual and customary calendar, and however, being open to conversations for how we might look at calendars differently in the future.
So in the packet, and I thought this might be easier. I hope it's not more confusing, but there are 4 calendars in the packet. 2 of them are labeled with the letter A, A1 and A2. Think about the letter A as standing for starting school after Labor Day, and the 2 calendars labeled B that have the start of school before Labor Day. A1 is the status quo calendar, and that calendar was labeled A at our last meeting. Calendar A2 is very much the same, except it adds a week of break at Thanksgiving, which pushes the end of the school year out. And I will point out that what that does is it pushes the grading day at the end of the school year to Monday. And we have heard multiple times from the associations that they really do not like that. But nevertheless, it's been done before. And the B calendars are ones that start after Labor Day. And the variability in those is the length of spring break. One of them has a 1-week
Can I
spring
just
break and one
clarify?
has
You
2.
said B starts
Excuse me, before.
before.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm
Never
just-
before.
that's
You're right.
I thought I heard that way. I just wanted to make
misstated.
sure. Okay.
And, again, I'm happy to answer questions. Our recommendation is to go with A1, which is the original A calendar. And then I think there's a lot of discussion to be had about calendars in the future, for sure.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I know that, and thank you for all the work on this, and I know we had quite a bit of outreach that was done so that we could, at those forums, ask for input, and we appreciate that. I know, speaking on behalf of all of the board members, we did receive a lot of input on this topic, which I think we kind of expected when we ended the last meeting, not being able to provide one at that point in time. And I just want to say thanks to everyone that did provide their input. I did do a little tabulation of everything that we had received, and we didn't receive any, to be honest, in all of the comments that we received that were in support of doing anything other than the status quo calendar, but including the opportunity to look into new things. All of the same reasons that everybody already knows, but we had concerns for air conditioning, concerns for sporting events and activities that kids have, programs and summer camps and things that they're doing outside right now. And the fact that if you look around the state, there aren't a lot of other districts or schools that are doing it. So that makes it also very challenging for a lot of people, because people were feeling like our kids would be actually at a disadvantage for some of those other things that are happening that they couldn't do during their summertime. And I think we did hear from a lot of people that said it would be, however, very beneficial, and they understand that summer slide exists for certain students, maybe not all, but certain students. And I think that there was some positive comments about trying to find other solutions maybe for how we can implement some summer programs through the district like what we're doing, and maybe continuing that kind of a process for the time being while we're engaging in, really thorough review. And I think it does take an effort of talking with students, talking with families, talking with other community members, figuring out all of the challenges that come and go with decisions that have to be made, and that the overarching message is just, that's a lot of undertaking and a lot of change in a time when people are changed out and just need some status quo, continuing to get back to normal, and focusing on the fall. I heard that a lot also, in trying to keep our kids and get our kids to kind of a full-time status in the fall if we can. So I just wanted to provide that as an overview of what I had heard from a majority of the comments that we had received as board members. Are there other, go ahead.
First off, I want to show my real appreciation to the students who wrote to us. I thought we've got some really good writers in high school, particularly. It's never too early to get politically and community involved in your community. And so I really appreciate hearing from them. I really appreciate hearing from the parents who really dove into the research in this, who took a lot of time to break things down and to show the different sides. I appreciate my former colleagues, teachers who shared their thoughts on it. I want to say I had a surgery just recently and was not doing well, so I did not reply to many messages, and so I want people to know who did write that I did receive those and took them to heart. When I got on the board and when I decided not to run, I thought I have X amount of time to change the world, and I want to change the world, and I think that this issue of 3 months, almost 3 months, where kids don't go to school is not good for many kids. And I think it's dangerous for many kids. And despite a lot of research saying it doesn't help, I've seen a lot of research that shows it does help. I believe that the work that we're doing to create opportunities this summer are going to be incredible. And create some of those opportunities when kids get to be creative and think. And I want to push, especially those of you who are staying on the board after this summer, to think outside the box in terms of calendars. Like, why does there need to be one calendar? Why can't there be a calendar that allows summer students in summer to work and get credit for that? Why can't there be a calendar that can work in sport camps and all those different activities and opportunities and work with our community partners to create project learning? Like, there's a way to do it that we can be really creative and really thoughtful. And but I also recognize that people are tired and they want some semblance of normal. And so I'm not going to push for a major calendar revision tonight. I do want to say one more thing, though. There was one voice that was very noticeable in its absence in this, and that was, for months, we had been hearing from very vocal community members saying pretty awful things about us, telling us that we have to get kids in their seats now. And our kids are, for mental health reasons, are failing. Our kids are struggling because they're not in school. And the moment that we present opportunities to get them in class for more than 9 weeks, we get slammed for it. And those voices, particularly those who are running Facebook groups and candidates for school board, were silent on this. And I'm furious about that. I'm absolutely furious that the point doesn't seem to be about learning. It seems to be about sports It seems to be about just winning your own political points. And I'm ashamed of that. So I just want that to be said. So I'll be supporting calendar 1A1 today. Again, I appreciate our students being involved, and I hope they're seeing that their voice can make a difference.
We had some good conversations with the superintendent about not making this a push, but making it a process. Jennifer and I have talked for 4 years about year-round school.
It's true.
And I mean, Justin and Lisa are like the smartest. Your IQs are higher than anybody else in this room for sure about knowing about education. When you interviewed for the board the first time and talked about screen time, my jaw was hanging open about how you know about education. You're subject matter expert in education. And, as a parent, I know, and as a person, I know there's summer slide, but I can listen to you. You are a subject matter expert in that. And I don't want this to go away. I definitely support A1. Our community needs a little stabilization, but this needs to be a process, not a push. Hopefully we can. I know Mr. Larry has other plans, but I hope that we can really, really make this one of the number one goals of our district.
Thank you.
Dr. Ward?
Sure. Like the other directors that have gone before me, I just want to take a moment and speak directly to the students that contacted me and other members of the board. In 4 years of serving on the board, I've never had student feedback like I've received on this topic. And I really want to thank you sincerely for that. It takes courage and initiative to reach out to adult members of a board and to make your experience and your thoughts known. And while I can't promise that that I or any board member individually or boards collectively will always agree with you, but in this case I do. And I personally like a 2 the best. I think that that's a very, very moderate change that we have plenty of time to plan for and moves us in the direction of summer learning. But I'm not going to die on my sword on it and can go with A1. So saying that and moving forward, I'll also echo what the other directors have said. And I would say to our community as well, that, I hope that the district will go forward in engaging the community in this conversation. When you all gave us feedback about you need to be asked, you certainly do. But I would say that when you are asked to, I think year-round school maybe is not the right term to use, and maybe think about year-round learning. I'm really excited about Think Big Summer. I'm really excited to see that fleshed out and what that offers. And I think, kind of like Director Roach said, that we should be thinking not about sitting in a hot, sweaty classroom all through summer, but through different ways that learning can be accessed by all the members of our community, not just those who come from families that can afford to send them to camps and on great vacations. And other ways to look at the work experience. I just think there really is an opportunity here. I trust that the district will go forward with that, and I ask the community to engage with that with really open and creative minds.
I'll just quickly add it. I thought our long discussion, though we didn't come to an agreement, I got the sense that we did agree that there's going to need to be a process of engagement on this issue in the coming months. And I think I just wonder if attitudes will be a little bit different if they're not looking here in April at the summer just around the corner. And I got to believe that people will be willing to think a little bit bigger about this issue and maybe have a little bit different answer. So, but I support a calendar A1 for 21-22.
And I do think I agree. It is a process, and it does take time. And to be creative and really think outside the box, you need to have those other voices there, providing some input about what will work. And I think we've had lots of discussions about the fact that there's so many different ways that we can engage with different groups of students and different people to make sure that that works for everyone in all the different scenarios that are there. And that's a big undertaking and not one that any of us can do in just a few months. And so I appreciate, again, all of the feedback. I don't think any of the board members probably were able to get through responding to everyone. So we apologize for that. But again, I'll echo what the other board members have said. We heard them all and we read them all, and we appreciated them all. And they came from all over students and staff and administrators and parents and grandparents. So it is helpful. And the one thing I love that I've learned through this whole process recently, as much as sometimes we've had some significant negativity or challenging decisions that have had to be made that aren't necessarily what decisions or topics that everybody agrees on, there's engagement one way or the other. People are actually engaged. And I remember 2 years ago and 3 years ago when I started on the board, and we would have a meeting sitting here and we had 2 people in the audience. Every meeting, 2 people from our community. Or we would host or try to host an activity outside and have no more than a handful of people come. And people are there, and people are voicing their concerns and giving us their feedback. And we have a superintendent and an assistant superintendent and administrators that are there listening to all of it. And yes, it's got the gamut of things from one end of the spectrum to the other in what we're hearing. But we appreciate that everybody's taking the time to engage in the process, because that, I believe, is how we do make strides forward in the future, is to understand everybody's concerns and be able to make those decisions collectively. So thank you to everyone for doing that. Any other calendar questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion for calendar.
I will move to approve calendar A1 as presented.
We have a motion on the table to approve calendar A1, which is our status quo calendar, as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, calendar A1 is approved unanimously for the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
He thinks he got off the.
You don't have to come back again? No. Okay, so we are moving into our school resource officer IGA amendment. And I believe, is this Jim again, or?
I can speak to it.
Okay.
So what you have before you is an intergovernmental agreement based upon our existing agreement with the city of Albany. So this year we paid the city of Albany in advance for all of the school resource officer services. Clearly, students weren't in school, and so school resource officers were reassigned through the city. And rather than refunding us the money related to the lack of services needed, they are instead proposing this IGA to basically carry over those dollars that we have prepaid into next year to offset the cost for next year.
And will that be is that a prepaid scenario? So our budget would then decrease a little bit for next year's services?
Correct.
Basically?
Correct.
Okay. So again, this was coming back to us as old business. Were there any additional questions about the intergovernmental agreement?
What happens if they still have the staffing problems? Next year they call and say, you know what, we're still.
Yeah, so in the informal conversations that I've had with the chief and the city manager, and I haven't talked to them about it in the last couple of months, but if that were the case, they would honor the return of the money. It's a trusting relationship, so yeah.
Put a judgment on the city. So
Right. That would be unpleasant. That would be unpleasant. So yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I have just a comment.
Yep.
First off, when I started working in GAPS in 2005, I was the leadership teacher at North Albany Middle School, and a significant part of my role, I had school resource officers coming in multiple times during the year, got them involved in student staff volleyball games and basketball games. Officer Fandrum has cuffed me more times than I can remember. I've always had incredibly positive relationships with our SROs. And as a behavior specialist, I was very reliant on SROs. I would be in contact multiple times a week. A school district's relationship with the police department is incredibly important. And I've seen up close the importance of that. And I am a very strong proponent of community policing. I will not be supporting this today because I think we still need a conversation about what policing looks like in schools. And I'm not ready to kick the can down the road without having some of those conversations first. And I think there's things that we can agree on and things that we can, if we continue to come to the table and talk to each other. And I'm happy to be a part of that as much as I possibly can. But I think we need to explore beyond the status quo. So I won't be supporting this tonight.
What is the action that's needed from the board tonight to just approve this amendment?
The agreement.
Correct, to approve the amendment. So city council already, I believe they took action on this last week.
They did. I watched the meeting. They did.
Okay.
They did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, I want to thank the city for taking that, making that statement. They have budget concerns of their own, and they're basically saying they're not committing that they would pay this money, but they're definitely, the police chief, when they did approve it, seemed very confident that they would have the money to pay their half. And so I want to thank them for committing to our SROs. And I came on the board. This contract was one of the first items we dealt with when we came on in 2019, and I kind of took it upon myself to talk to the principals of South and West and the relationship with the SROs, which I wasn't, that was a world I wasn't really familiar with, just having an elementary student. And everybody that I talked to was just super. Much like Director Roach talked about how important the details of how they help them in their day. And we're only talking about, I think it's clear, we're talking about 2 officers. 2 officers. That is the extent of our SRO relationship. And it's spendy. It's a spendy budget item, but it's, my experience is absolutely worth it. And I want to thank the city for committing to it. And I think we should commit to, since we already paid, we should commit to this relationship going forward.
We did hear, I think, through some of our comments recently, and I know when I've talked to students and past students, there are a lot of people in our community of various ages who have all had their lives impacted by the 2 officers that we've had in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's very true. And we hear that from many people. And so I think we all very much appreciate the work they've done and the relationship that we have. And I believe that we can, pursue again, advancing the funds from this year to next year so that we can continue that relationship. And I also think that there's still opportunity to look at during that time frame then too what the relationship looks like and how we use it and how we get the best benefit from those folks being there when, like we said, there's only two, and that's hard sometimes because they can't be everywhere all at once either. And there's definitely a need for that support, I think. So, yeah. All right.
Could we take like a 3-4 minute before we vote on this?
Yes.
Use the restroom, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can. All right. We will take a quick break. Why don't we take 5 minutes? And that clock's not right. So we will
9:30.
No.
9:30. We'll come back at 9:35.
Sorry.
Okay. Nope, that's fine. Melissa, I didn't see a motion. All right. I think we have everyone back. All right. So we are J2, and this is our intergovernmental agreement amendment for the school resource officers. Was there any other discussion? No? If not, there is not a motion in board book, but we will entertain a motion on this amendment.
I move we accept the intergovernmental agreement with the city of Albany.
Okay, so a motion to accept the interagency agreement amendment for the school resource officer with the city of Albany as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so 4-1, that passes. Next on our list, we have board policies. And I believe this is Mr. Bettram. He's joined us at the table.
I believe the superintendent is up first.
Oh, is she? Or did I just skate over you?
It's okay. It's just because Mr. Buttram is so Johnny on the spot that he looks ready. So
I didn't want to be shuffling papers
I
while everyone
know,
was waiting
it's
on me.
great. I know, it's so funny because when you first came up, I was so distracted. I lost my train of thought in the previous agenda item. And
I was
thought,
trying to do the opposite.
I have no idea what I'm saying. So board members, thank you very much, Chair Butzner and Executive Director Buttram as well. The first policy
Are we good to go? Okay. And all those opposed? Okay, that policy passes unanimously. That takes us to our next one. Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Unfortunately, I believe you're stuck with me for the remainder of your evening. So basically, Joe, looking at, I'm the only thing between you and the door. So the first thing we have is new board policy, ECACA. This one establishes our radio frequency ID program. We did have a fairly robust conversation about this one last time, but just as a reminder, this is a generalized, this is listed from OSBA policy with no major edits, just a normal localizing. And it establishes an overarching policy to allow us to employ RFID technology. And we're bringing this to you in preparation of running a pilot with RFID tracking on school buses next year. As a service that we're trying to expand to provide to parents.
This is a pilot.
This policy is not a pilot policy. This establishes the ability to. What it requires in here is a 30-day notification for any way we would want to implement that policy. We would do that. We would run a pilot. And then based on what we learned from that, we would figure out how to implement the system, a system-wide use of the technology.
Perfect.
And since you brought it, it does include an opt-in and opt-out provision. Sometimes that confuses folks, but it does allow for both. You might use one in some instances and the other in other instances.
Just to make sure that we're very careful when we go to parents and tell them what we're doing. And this is a safety thing, we're not, I don't want misperceptions about things and just making sure the whole community understands what the benefits of this are. It's still a little different.
I think the beauty of this, when you read through the policy, there are enough controls in the policy, that as long as everybody understands the entirety of the policy, it should assuage most of the concerns that people have. There's limits on how the range of the technology, there's opt-in and opt-out provisions for every version of its use. There's broad ability to address any individual concerns within the policy.
And the intention around the policy is really to ensure the greatest amount of safety for students. And I think to your point, Director Aganaga, as we communicate, really emphasizing the reason we want to do that is so you always know where your child is. whether they got on the bus, whether they got off the bus, whether they got off the bus at the right place, where they are on the bus as the bus is moving, all of those questions that we had. And I think that will be really important. I think that will be really important.
This is critical, and it comes from. Had the conversation numerous times of, in this day and age, why isn't that? Demand. I mean, parents, I've had the conversation numerous times of, in this day and age, why isn't there an app for that? Well, this is how you enable the app for that,
Right.
to let people know where their kids are. And so it's incredibly useful for parents.
Great. Okay. So if there are no other questions, we'll entertain a motion on this policy as well.
I move we approve policy ECA-CA as presented tonight.
So a motion on the table to approve policy ECA-CA as presented. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, next up, under items for old business, we have our 2021-22 Chromebook purchase. Again, as a reminder, this is to replace Chromebooks that are aging out of their useful shelf life in order to maintain our one-to-one progress. I believe we've covered it in fairly robust detail last time, so I think I'll just ask for questions.
Any questions? Okay.
I'll make a motion to pre-approve the 2021-22 Chromebook purchase as presented in an amount not to exceed $580,000.
There's a motion on the table to pre-approve the 2021-2022 Chromebook purchase as presented in an amount not to exceed $580,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That also passes unanimously.
Okay, next up, we have our monthly bond report. And again, I think in the interest of timeliness and based on the fact that I don't have David McKay here, he is taking some well-needed vacation. I will just ask for questions and move forward from there. Okay.
Were there any? I'm just going to make a note that Director Ward is leaving our meeting for the remainder of the evening. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Any questions on the monthly bond report? I just have to make a comment that seeing it only be 64 pages is so exciting. For those of us that have been here for a while, they started out literally like, I think almost 400 pages or more at times. And so gotta love seeing only 60-some pages left and the fact that we actually see full facilities and all of the work coming to fruition, which is great to see. So you can tell David he is off the hook for any questions that you see.
Pass that along.
He's on that break.
Right? He's going to go, I'm going to take vacation more often.
No. Okay, next up, we have two items related to the new transportation facility. So I tried to pull together enough detail and lay out a roadmap for all of the pieces because all of the pieces don't come together all at once. So you would have an expectation of what you're going to see and kind of the approximate order that you're going to see it. And then the way the pieces fit together are laid out in there. I won't go through all of them in detail other than to say if it didn't become clear in this. There's the piece we're getting ready to do right now, which is to get the loan, which is the bulk of the funding. We can decide how much money we want to borrow for this project. There's a piece that happens in the middle, which is the sale of our existing properties. We don't really get to control the prices for that. We'll go out to the market and the market will offer us prices on them, and that will be an amount of money. And then the difference between that and what we've borrowed and got from our properties, we intend to make up with the construction excise tax. And so that's the way that the financing piece fits together. And these are the estimates that we have laid out for that. The first step being to go out for the loan that we would need for the transportation. none of this is new, I just tried to lay it out in a sort of roadmap checklist kind of way, because that's how it is in health. So with that, then behind there are examples of the depreciation schedule, the initial estimates that we might see on the loan that we would get. Obviously, that would still have to be negotiated going forward after the board would take action on the resolution next board meeting. And then the final piece there is the piece that we'll bring back at the next meeting, which is asking the board to authorize the superintendent or the executive director of operations to go through this process to secure this loan. It's similar to what we went through for the previous bond, just a little bit different format. With that, any questions?
I appreciate having the initial information, because I think I remember the funding of it, because I knew there were steps to it. So I appreciate you putting that together. That was extremely helpful to see. I assume the resolution that we saw for the funding or the loan, is just based on current rates.
It will be based on current rates when we actually go out. That's what you're basically doing, is at that point authorizing the superintendent and I to go out and work with the bond market in order to pull that together.
So the numbers we're seeing here are just estimates based on.
Those are estimates of current.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. Go ahead.
In terms of timing,
In my conversation with the underwriters, it's, you know, it's like everything else, you want to move because we need to get the money in place and we have to write checks and do the things we need to do in the project. But there in the future, I have not had any predictions that now is better than later or later is better than now. One of those things is true.
That's a prediction right there. So I was gonna ask the same question about the sale of the property. Has there been any feedback on, like, should we pursue the sale of the property sooner because we're expecting changes or not? Interim. No, go ahead.
We have got interest expressed in both properties. And that's part of what I've laid out there in terms of the rough timeline. And when I think we'd be coming back is I will have the next piece of this ready also for first reading at the next board meeting. Not a reading at the next board meeting. Not a compelling argument one way or the other. Of the specific timing in the real estate market and that, it seems to be going fairly well. People are interested in buying things. The generic sense, however, is selling the Ferry Street property now, which is actually Marion Street with the division, makes sense because we can do that now and move forward, and the market is fairly strong for us. The challenge with trying to do anything with the bus garage right now is we're so far out from completion, you'd end up trying to sell it and lease it back, and it would create a bit of a wrinkle. It also is a less attractive property if it comes with a bunch of strings attached to it. That's why you'll notice the timeline that I've recommended kind of back plans from substantial completion of the new facility.
Okay, thank you. Other board comments or questions? No? So this one will come back as old business in our next meeting. So if you do have questions or comments, get those to us in the meantime.
And then the final piece that we have tonight for the board is a recommendation to establish a contract for project management for the transportation facility. This is kind of the routine as we've moved from thinking about having a transportation facility to now let's go forward and build one. This is a recommendation to expand HMK's services to specifically include this expanded scope of work. It falls within the budgeted amounts for it, and the budget is the same as the last version that you saw for it, but that's included in there as well. This would simply formalize that agreement with HMK. To date, we've been doing it on an hourly basis. And same thing, we'll bring this back to the board at the next meeting.
Any comments or questions on this one? No, seeing none. We are good. That was
All I
quick.
nice work.
Yes. And I was just trying to get into other business, which I don't see we have anything else under.
I did
the
have one
calendar.
thing in other business.
Oh, go ahead.
And apologize, I'm gonna politic. Are our mics working?
Yes, they
Yes.
are. Mhm.
So I just want to clarify and clear some of the air. Asking the police to leave and not having them this year are not connected whatsoever. There is no termination of our SROs. It's purely just staffing at this time. And I just really want people to know that the board, the staff, nobody has fired SROs. And just to make that very clear, it unfortunately, there's just not the staffing at this time. They're not connected. Please stop connecting them. We understand that safety and security is a very important part of our district. 1/5 of the population of Albany is inside our schools as of today, back in school. But those events, please understand and feel free to reach out to our board chair, are not connected. So I just want to make sure people clarify. We are supportive of that community, and there is always room to grow, and there will be, Director Roche, there will.
Virtual this year. And thank you to Chris Green for all of the organization that she's doing for that. We have the bond oversight committee, and we have 2 budget committee meetings between now and our next regular board meeting. So it's important to note that you don't see each other. We won't be as a board in session aside from those budget committee meetings until May 7th.
And both the budget committee meetings are staying virtual.
Correct. Those will be virtual. All right. Sorry to interrupt you from the second gavel.
I was looking under other business, hold up, and I didn't see it because I didn't go under adjourned. Anyway, thank you to everyone for joining us in person. It was nice to see your faces in person. And have a good evening. We are adjourned.
Sorry, Dan. It's been really good.
No, I.
Guys, can I come back?